So we have Isidro Laso here, guys, who is one of the people running Startup Europe, basically initiative around. He will explain more about helping startups in Europe grow and network better and so on. And first time in Bulgaria, no? Welcome.
Yeah, the first time I'm here in Bulgaria, my first time in Sofia. A great city, excellent weather, the people very friendly, a bit like in Spain. Yeah. So Southern Europe, very, very nice.
The fact that you come from Spain, the weather and people is good, so we have a tick box.
I pay attention as a good Spaniard to food, to weather.
Okay, so you have to tick the boxes. So if you want, tell us a little bit about you. Like you've been in Cambridge, then you went to European Commission. If you want, tell us briefly about your story.
Well, the first thing is that I was an entrepreneur myself. I created two small companies, not the startups at that moment, it was 20 years ago. The concept of the startups, pivoting and these kind of things, MVPs, minimum viable products, they didn't exist at that moment, so they were software companies. And then I moved into the private sector, and then I started some academic activities, and I started as expert also for the European Commission. Then I started and still am a fellow, continuing fellow in Cambridge University, and also I am thought leader of the United Nations, the ITU agency, the agency in charge of IT. I'm working for the Commission now 16 years.
16 years.
The first 4 as an expert, and now as a full officer. And in 2011, we started this big initiative called Startup Europe.
Can you explain a little bit more so people understand what Startup Europe does and how it helps companies?
Yeah, well, I will start with what is not.
Okay.
So Startup Europe is not about giving grants to the startups. And what it is, in a single word, is about ecosystem. It's about building ecosystems in Europe and, from the EU perspective, connecting ecosystems. We don't want to build a startup valley in Europe, that's not our purpose. We want to build a startup continent by connecting the pools of talents across Europe. This has to be done in Bulgaria, connecting the pools of talents that you have, Burgas and all the other cities, and Sofia, etc. The same work that has to be done here, we had to do at European level. And we have started the last 2 years on connecting also these hubs in Europe with international hubs. So we started with Silicon Valley, then we have done India, Africa, Latin America, Mediterranean countries, and we might start next year also Asia.
So it's bridging basically these ecosystems, creating the networks, creating the channels to enter those regions. Can you give examples of initiatives that you guys do in order for these hubs to maintain this connection?
Yeah, so we work in 2 different ways. And the first one is we support initiatives from the ecosystem. So they come to us, for example, a group of people who is a group of startups. They come to us and they say, we need your help in order to build bridges with Latin American market, for example. And then first thing we test is that these startups are European startups and that there is a demand beyond 1 or 2 startups from the ecosystem on building bridges with this region of the world. Once we validate the concept, let's say, then we provide them political support and connections. We don't provide money. No money is provided.
Sometimes connections in reality is better.
Exactly. So this is what they ask us. They very rarely ask for money. What they want is that we recognize them as a network, a kind of official network, that we help them to open the doors of all those governments in those countries. There are countries, in the world where the government has a very important role in the economy, not in Europe, but in many other parts it's like that. So to have an entry into the door of the ministries is very important if you want to do business there. So we help them in all these kind of connections. We, in the case, for example, of Africa, we collocate the Startups Fair organized by this network back to the official EU-African Union Summit, where Angela Merkel, Macron, and all the head of the states of the EU, plus the head of the states of the African countries, they will be together there. So it's a way for them to provide exposure to these startups and investors, to these policymakers, and there will be also a manifesto written by the startups in Africa and Europe about what needs to be done to build bridges between Africa and Europe, and this manifesto will be later discussed by the head of the states. So this kind of high-level political support is the kind of
so it's just
support.
opening doors, basically.
Opening doors at all levels.
And what do you see in Europe? Like, what are the typical startups that benefit mostly from your initiatives? Like, which companies can benefit from that? Because we in Bulgaria have a lot of them. Many of them are not aware of what is happening in Europe. What are the European, enablers, helpers? So, what sort of startups have benefited?
Well, all the startups can benefit, but certainly the ones who are more prone to participate in our activities are those who are in the growth phase. Because those who are in a very early stage, what they need is they need to expand, to grow, to incubate, to accelerate within the local ecosystem. But when they reach a certain level, they need to get out. A country, for example, like Bulgaria, that is not a big country in terms of population, they need immediately to reach to international markets. This happens in Estonia, in Finland, everywhere. Happens like that in these countries. They immediately internationalize. So those startups who are in the internationalization phase, they can benefit from us. The problem, or the problem they have to overcome is to know that we exist and to apply for that. But we tried our best. We have a one-stop shop for all the things that we do. It's called Startup Europe Club.eu, and the concept of the club is because we want to build a community. And there is a success case from Bulgaria. There is a company that is from Bulgaria who is building drones to transport cargo, etc. You met him before. And he, for example, is coming with us to Africa, to this event that I mentioned to you before.
It's a very relevant market for them.
And I asked him, well, how did you learn about the call? We met an open call, etc. And then he learned that because he got out in his feed within Facebook. So someone shared with him, and then he decided to go. So this is how we communicate. We try our best, but certainly sometimes we are successful, and in other times not. In this case, we were successful thanks to the social networks.
Amazing. And so how you see Bulgaria coming into all these mix? You've been to Bulgaria, already a couple of days. What do you see? What do you like?
So I was doing, in Cambridge, we do a lot of immersions, days or immersion weeks. So yesterday was a kind of immersion day for me. I met like 30 different people from the ecosystem here, not only from Bulgaria, but from many other cities here. And then I realized that one of the strengths of Bulgaria ecosystem is certainly the talent. It's certainly, in terms of technology, blockchain sounds to me very, very strong here. Also, a huge amount of people, dynamic people who wants to build the ecosystem. So all those recipients are there. However, this is in the positive side. On the negative side, I saw a lack of coordination or collaboration within the ecosystem leaders. This is something that needs to be worked out, and also needs to be a kind of consensus about how you are going to sell Bulgaria to the rest of the world. Are you going to focus in talent and and blockchain? Are you going to focus on being the entry point to the whole Balkans region? Are we to focus on being the bridge to Turkey and Asia? I mean, these kind of things needs to be done, because in a competing world like the world of startups, you need to have a unique advantage. And this is the unique advantage, is the one that you have to come all the ecosystem together, build a kind of a startup house. We have done that in Madrid, and we are going that also in Warsaw, in Poland. We are happy to help you also to do something here in Bulgaria, bringing everybody, getting a consensus about which are the 2-3 selling points for Bulgaria, and then everybody rowing in the same direction to make everybody in the world to understand, if you want access to talent, if you want to develop a blockchain, or if you want to enter into the Balkans, come to Bulgaria.
That's amazing, yes. And that's one thing, which is basically all these European states, nations, to have this competing unique advantage. Do you see collaboration between them as well? because you said you're from Spain, Spanish market is interesting for certain reasons, Germany is interesting for others, France, UK, maybe UK not anymore, but you know. Yeah. So how Startup Europe, how's collaboration between these European hubs?
So maybe not to my surprise, but a fact is that there is more willing to collaborate with other ecosystems outside your country, sometimes inside your small. I think this is like with your neighbor. Normally, sometimes you have good relations, but you may have problems. With the one who is farther away, you normally go very well along because you meet very rarely. With your neighbor, you see him every day. So, yeah. So then surprisingly, or not so surprisingly, the fact is that there is a lot of willingness to do that. So if you start visualizing to the rest of the world a kind of one-stop shop for the startups in Bulgaria, so that people from Spain, you mentioned, or Germany, they can see where they can learn about this ecosystem. And then there is some entry points into the ecosystem, some names with name, family name, email, even telephone, LinkedIn, and then they can start collaborating, and you will be surprised how easy will be the international collaboration to get into those international networks. Of course, only those who are prepared will succeed. So it's a very early stage. A startup wants to enter into those networks will be a waste of time for him. But a startup or investor who wants to join international networks of investors, and is an investor who has some value to add, the connection and the openness is very, very easy.
So you think that here certain platforms, open platforms where people can find each other, like Discovery, and connect with each other, is a good stepping point. Do you guys work on things like that?
We have, as I said, we have the one-stop shop for all that we do.
Okay.
So do we have all the open calls that we make are always there. The open call for Africa or for Silicon Valley, etc., etc. There, if there is some funds, money available, is also announced there. So everything that has to do with the European Commission in relation to startups is normally publicized there. So something like that could be done here. So I'm not talking about the social network for the people here, because there are many social networks, LinkedIn, etc. So you don't need to. It's better to create a group. Exactly. It's a one-stop shop. And with the purpose, not only to help the people in Bulgaria to know what happens, because many maybe early stage startups, they don't know what is happening, so will be also useful for them. But from the EU perspective, the added value of this one-stop shop should be that if an investor in Silicon Valley wants to invest in Bulgarian startups, he has an entry point into the ecosystem, because otherwise to whom he can call. Nice. And then the one-stop shop could be the entry point and provide transparency.
During today's conference, we spoke a lot about the fact that Europe needs, not only Bulgaria needs its uniqueness, but Europe as well needs uniqueness. And otherwise, you know, China and the US, they are taking the whole market. How does European Commission look at startups generally? Why is it important for Europe? Do they recognize that the fact that, you know, these grassroots businesses will be the next value-adding businesses and economic boosting businesses? So
I will start with the second part, and then how we try to see the uniqueness of Europe. Yeah. On the second part, a few years ago, we had the feeling that the startups were creating jobs and wealth. But now we have data, hard data, that clearly say that between 40 to 60% of all the net jobs created in Europe are created by the high growth, early creative companies. So it's not the SMEs, the small and medium enterprises, who create jobs. No, it's 5% of those small and medium enterprises who are high growth companies. Those 5% are responsible between 40 to 60% of the net job creation. 60 in Sweden, for example. Yeah. So it's amazing. It's not the big companies. Big companies don't create net jobs. We all know. Public administration, they don't create net jobs either. It's the SMEs. But within the SMEs, a disproportionate percentage is created between this 5% of the SMEs. Those who are high growth, agile companies, what we usually call startups. So that's why we believe it's important to work here. And what is the uniqueness of Europe? So we have a very nice video, Startup Europe, precisely presenting the uniqueness. And Europe is unique in the amount of pools of talents. There is no other way, not in Asia, not in India, not in the States, just so many pools of talents everywhere, even here in Bulgaria. There are 5 or 6 cities with a lot of talent. So our uniqueness is to create a kind of a startup continent connecting those pools of talents. Nobody can do anything like that. In the States, there might be 4 or 5 pools. But in Europe, there are many. First class pools of talent and second class, of course. But certainly, the connection is between those pools of talents is our uniqueness.
Okay, so we are more or less going to the end of our interview. But we have 2 special questions which always ask the people who are here. The first one, if you had a goldfish, one of those you can have wishes to, a genie or lamp, like a special, I don't know, magic wish. What do you want more for Europe? Like, even if it's not very realistic, what do you want more?
Well, I was not prepared the question. I don't see your movie, your show every day. But my wish. You can edit, I hope. My wish for Europe. Yeah, my wish for Europe would be that we all realize that we are different, but that we need to respect one another, and that by being different, this is precisely our uniqueness. If we are able to respect one another and to work together in the startups area, but in all the startups as well, respecting the uniqueness of every country in Europe, that will be my wish, because that will be the magic formula for Europe, for the future.
And you said it very precisely, that the fact that there's so many different talent pools with so many uniquenesses by themselves coming from different history, backgrounds and so forth, if they connect and exchange their sort of diversity factor, that would be great, and I also believe that. Great, and the second question we have, the startup world and crazy, there is a lot of stress in it. You said 5% of the companies are the high growth ones, but there's so much stress in that. This creativity, where the world is going, jobs are taken by machines. So how do you hack yourself to maintain sanity in that world?
Yeah, well, this is true. It's amazing. I mean, the startup, when I started here in 2011, I'm an engineer. I was working in research and innovation, so coding and hard things. And then I entered into this world of the startups. The startup is a kind of virus, and then it's non-stop. You cannot stop. You enjoy it so much, this dynamic environment. Work is not work, it's fun. And you always say to my team that the number one objective is to have fun. Yeah. And then we have to do things, but if we don't have fun while we are doing the things, something is wrong. So this concept of having fun while you are working, I think is quite unique in the startup world. Yeah. I try to bring to the commission officers that is not the traditional atmosphere, but I always try that this is the rule number one. We need to deliver, we need to comply with the hierarchy, etc., but always having fun, enjoying a lot of social activities. Coming from Southern Europe, this is okay. So this is the how I keep up with this fast-changing environment of the startups, having fun.
Amazing. So thanks, Isidro. It was a pleasure to have you here, and we hope you come back and connect more of these dots in Europe.
I hope.
So Bulgaria is also working on its uniqueness and producing these high-growth startups. So you'll be hearing more, and you'll be helping more for that, right?
Thank you very much for the invitation. It was a pleasure, and you can count on my help and the help of the Commission, for sure.
Definitely. Have an enjoying stay. Yeah.
Thank you.